Okay, let's now concentrate on our primary navigation. This is of course what we're aiming for, and this is what we currently have. Nothing but a little word inside a black band. So the first thing we're going to need to do obviously is alter the markup. So we go into our code editor and we'll have a look at our index.html. Now let's see, what do we have here? We've got our band navigation. This is what we're looking at, with a few more divs inside. Just as I said last time, we obviously pile things together using divs, and now we can improve the semantics of what we're actually been building. So the first thing I'm going to do is swap out this central container. Instead of being a div, we're going to make it a nav. You should always put your navigation lists within an additional nav element, because it describes perfectly what's going on and requires very little effort from you. So that done, we can now look at, let's see, what are we doing here? We need to actually swap out this for a UL. Correct. Now we're basically going to fill that up with list items. Each one is going to have some kind of link. So there'll be a few of these. Let's just copy and paste those. We'll have home. We'll have one for tech. This is all fairly generic nonsense. Business. Entertainment. What else do we have? Social media and contact according to the design. Social media contact. Alright, let's save that. And there we have a colossal menu within our navigation band. So that obviously needs some styling straight away. So the first thing we're going to do is kick off some navigation styles within our CSS file. Don't know what's going on with my spelling today, that's fine. Okay, so let's see, we want to first of all zero out any margins that have been applied to the ULs and to the LIs within that, because obviously having dealt with dealing with the boilerplate, skeleton boilerplate, there have been some styles applied to an ordered list, so we'll get rid of those. So that's a good start, and now we can be a little bit more concentrate on getting things a little bit more presentable. So we'll have the nav primary, and we're going to focus on the list elements, the list items, display things in line, float things to the left. This is just going to make sure that we remove any additional spacing in things, and we need to make sure that these have a position of relative, which we'll need in order to use our drop down later on. How are we doing with that? That's not really reset very much at all, is it? So let's see. Let's now have a look at the anchors within them. We're going to display those as an inline block, which will allow us to determine the dimensions, but keep them remaining as an inline element. We're going to put a line height in 49, remembering of course that ties in with our 7 pixel baseline grid. I've got a colour here, of course, taken from our PSD. I want these to be uppercase, so I'm going to put that in like so. I want to get rid of any styling, get rid of the underline there, of course. Font weight's going to be bold, and letter spacing, because we're dealing with uppercase, I'm just going to increase ever so slightly, like so. Now I'm actually not affecting this at all, am I? So there's obviously something wrong with the way that I'm referencing things. It's because I've got this additional div here. Oh no, of course I haven't actually assigned. What's the matter with me? I've actually assigned a class of primary to my nav. That was silly of me. So this is what we're working towards now. We have our, of course you can have multiple navs throughout your documents, so it's always a good idea to make sure that you in some way identify your nav as being a primary navigation. So that's what we've done. Now if I have a look, we've got something that's a lot more recognizable as a navigation. Now let's carry on. I've missed some padding on that. I could do with some padding either side, so let's see. That should improve things. Okay, that's looking an awful lot better. Okay. Yeah, that looks good. Okay. Now we need a hover state. So like so, and we're going to just apply a background color. This is taken more or less from the PSD. It's okay, and then we'll apply a cursor pointer to make sure that our pointer always looks like that little pointing finger when we're hovering over. Okay, so that's looking quite cool. That's the basis of our navigation in actual fact. What we now need to look at is our submenu. So that's going to require us to alter the markup once again. We have our list items here, and what we're going to do is drop a second UL in as a child of our entertainment list item. So we'll tab in there and drop in a second UL like so. Don't need to apply any classes or anything because it can be identified perfectly well. And we're going to just whack some random anchors in there, just as we did with our main navigation. Gaming, TV. Again, these are taken from the PSD, so it's all fairly nonsensical. Okay, save that, and that will of course have messed up everything. You can see that it's inherited an awful lot of the styling from our first nav. That's fine, and that it's clearly a child of the entertainment. You can see it by its positioning alone that it's part of the list item that entertainment's in. So now let's do some styling on this while we've got it visible, and then we'll concentrate on it, on hiding it and revealing it as necessary. So in order to target our submenu, like so, all we need to do is continue in a very similar fashion. It's going to be in our primary, and it's just a UL within a UL. So keeping things visible at the moment, we want to position it absolutely. And let's see, we need to make sure it's on top of everything, of course, including the slideshow that's actually underneath it. We're going to give it a background of that slightly noisy texture that we've used on everything else, and that is the background bottom PNG, so that's fine. I actually have I need a minimum width because I want it to be at least the same width as the menu item it's dropping down from, otherwise it will look strange. And I also want some box shadow, which I'm just going to copy and paste here to save you watching me type it all. Okay, so now you can see that that's an awful lot better. It's not quite right because these anchors here are not fulfilling the whole width of the UL that they're dropping into. It's looking better though, so let's carry on. Let's make the list anchors actually behave properly. So let's target those properly. Nav primary, UL, can have another UL like that. That's those anchors, and I want to display them as block. If I can get my fingers to work properly. Okay, block, and I'm going to give them a line height of 35, again tying in with our baseline grid. not that it's particularly crucial for the drop down menu, and I'm going to get rid of the uppercase value on those. Okay, and I need to make sure that the list items aren't floating anymore. ULLI, like so. Float of none. Display those as list items once again. And I want a border on the bottom of those of 1 pixel solid, 38, 37, 37, that's a value taken from the PST. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. Obviously it needs to now be made invisible, and that's where the theory of our text indenting comes in. So let's now go back and sort that out. We need to make the whole submenu vanish from its default state, and that could be done in a number of ways. Many people for a long time have been using display none, like so. It gets rid of it, and then of course on the hover you can bring back the display to block. But the problem is that that not only hides the submenu from the presentation in our browser, it also hides the actual content from any other kind of screen reader or any other kind of device. So that's not very accessible in that case. So instead of doing display none, what a lot of people have used is again a position way off the screen somewhere, like so. That still keeps things hidden, and then of course you can bring back the position upon hovering, but that's a bad idea for the reasons we discussed earlier with our logo. So that's not an option either. So that leaves us with something of a problem. So the best thing we can do now is reduce the height to 0 pixels. If I show you that almost solves it, but of course the contents are pushing that out. So what you can now do is get rid of all those contents by stating that the overflow is hidden. So now the element is actually still there, but it's got a height of 0, and its overflow is hidden from view. So that keeps everything perfectly visible to other devices, such as screen readers. It makes it nice and accessible, and it makes it practical for our users as well. We can easily bring that out like so. I'm just going to add a hover state in order to bring that out. Hover and then a direct. I don't know what I'm doing. I need the UL within that LI. So now all I need to do is bring it back. So I'm going to put a height of auto and the overflow again auto, just to get rid of those two values. So checking it now, you can see that by hovering over I get the submenu back. That's perfectly clear. Now we could maybe make things a little bit more subtle by introducing some transitions, but we can't do that. We can't apply transitions to the height if we're not actually specifying the final height. We've said that it's auto so that it becomes as high as the actual element is, but that means we can't use any transitions. So we're going to apply transitions to the opacity instead. So if I give our UL a default opacity of 0, actually I was going to say it needs to be 10 on the hover. There we go. So it has a default opacity of 0, and upon hovering it gets its opacity back to fully visible. Then I can apply our transition to the opacity value. So let's have a look now, and you can see that that's fading in because we've transitioned the opacity. Alright, so that's actually looking almost complete. One final thing you'll notice is that the hover state on the entertainment here disappears once we're hovering over something else. So we need to apply what we call a persistent hover state, so that whenever this list item is hovered over, it maintains this background color. So let's see, where are we? I can do that like so, all the way down here. I go nav primary, and I will target the hover state of the, actually to demonstrate I'll just use the anchor within the list item. So when the list item is being hovered over, the anchor within that list item gets a background value of that, and you can see that it does, but obviously all of these children anchors are also inheriting that background, so that's problematic. We need to just make sure that we're only talking about the direct descendant of that list item. So that's why we use the descendant selector there, so it only selects the first immediate anchor while the list item is being hovered over. So that means that we can now perfectly see exactly what's going on with our hover states and everything. So that's good, but as you can see, even though it works, it's not ideal for smaller devices. So now what we're going to do is use a little trick and swap that out using jQuery for a nice little drop down menu.